This is Dr. Vijayan Gurumurthy Iyer. My topic of presentation is Environmental Health Impact Assessment EHIA process proposal for efficient and effective de-addiction centers in India. I thank conference organizers Magnus Group for giving me an opportunity to present this paper. I also thank to IAS officer, Director General, Bihar Institute of Public Administration and Rural Development, Dr. K.K. Pathak, for giving me an opportunity to present this particular paper. And the topic is given in the subdivisions: abstract, introduction, literature survey and historical background, materials and methods, results and discussions, conclusions and recommendations, and references. Alcohol are the other drugs of abuse as a poison that is harmful to body. That is a poison number, negative logarithm of lethal dose 50% test organisms. And any substance can be poisonous if too much is taken. That is, for example, ethyl alcohol. Ethyl alcohol has got about poison number of about 2.5. And paracetamol, it is about 2.5. And poisons include prescription of over-the-counter medicines taken in doses. That is called pharmacology and environmental toxicology. So pharmacology, if overdose is there, so it will become environmental toxicology. So the most of the pharmacological aspects, they are not covered with the environmental toxicology. So that is a very important need for this particular presentation. That is pharmacology as well as environmental toxicology. See, these two things that is to be covered in order to control the environmental aspects as well as the pharmacological aspects. So, for example, environmental impact assessment, environmental health impact assessment in food drugs administration, and how for example, carboxy hemoglobin level, how it is increasing upon exposure to the carbon monoxide poisoning. So it's exposure time as well as carbon monoxide saturation in the blood. And how this particular that is the medicinal effects that has been taken place: coagulation, decoagulation, flocculation, deflocculation, sedimentation in alcohol and other drugs. So this is called coagulation. That is the destabilization of the perikinetic, orthokinetic particles that are present in the blood. So that has, what is called that flocculation and get sedimentation. And when the pH, negative logarithm of hydrogen ion activity, if pH is alkaline, so coagulation and flocculation, sedimentation take place when alcohol or other drugs are used. And similarly, that is pH is reducing when the coagulation or flocculation occur. And similarly, destabilization of the perikinetic and stabilization of the perikinetic or orthokinetic particles that take place when the pH is less than 7. That is negative logarithm of hydrogen ion activity less than 7. So it becomes acidic samples. So both, that is tuberculation crystals. You can see the tuberculation and incrustation and tuberculation. Both crystals that is taken place. When pH is less than 1 or 1.5, it becomes hazardous acidic. And if pH is more than 13, it becomes hazardous alkaline. So the blood cancer, tumor, and nicotine and various brain disease, they are all based on the acidic hazardous as well as alkaline hazardous, because the pH is less than 2 and pH is more than 13. That is in the case of blood. So we can see the normal blood vessel and the blood vessel coagulated, flocculated in acidic manner, in alkaline manner. Decoagulation, deflocculation, and desedimentation in the in acidic range. So the 6 stages of the alcohol intoxication. So this is what I have told about this acidic as well as alkaline, hazardous coagulation as well as flocculation take place when present in alcohol and in a different percentage of the composition. And how this deoxygenation and reaeration take place. Deoxygenation means the removal of oxygen from the blood vessels, and reaeration means the addition of oxygen in blood vessels. So deoxygenation and reaeration, that is dissolved oxygen and dissolved nitrogen, both have the composition in blood, so that they simultaneously take place in neurons, in microscopically and nanoscopically. So this is called the oxygen sag phenomena, the deoxygenation and reaeration that take place simultaneously. So that is neurosis, for example, neurosis and Alzheimer's disease, as well as the various brain disease, have considerable impacts of the imbalance of the deoxygenation and reaeration. So this is in case of normal blood vessel, but in case of the injured or the affected, toxicated, or the reaction, reaction and toxication, toxic effects, as well as the the effects on the reaction capabilities. So in that, the deoxygenation and reaeration cannot be taken considerably. So that is why this poison scale, we have to consider the poison scale. For example, water, negative logarithm of lethal dose, 50% in kg per kg. This has to be considered. For example, caffeine. Caffeine has got 3.8, nicotine 4.3, and paracetamol 2.8, ethyl alcohol 2.2. So this is called a negative logarithm of lethal dose 50% test organisms, that is in kg per kg. So this is called poison number. So right from water toxicity 1 to botulinum toxicity, that is 12. So 1 to 12 number, just like pH 7 is neutral, pH 1 is hazardous, and pH hazardous acidic, and pH is more than 13 is hazardous alkaline. So same manner, here also the poison scale is described. And for example, you take the botulinum toxicity, it is 12. And so the pharmaceutical as well as the toxicological impacts. Toxicological impact assessment is considered in this particular poison scale. That is called environmental health impact assessment. Systematically identification and evaluation of the potential environmental health effects of the proposed pharmaceutical projects, proposed nicotine projects, proposed neuro projects, and proposed brain effect projects, programs, legislative actions with respect to the physical environment, chemical environment, biological environment, biochemical environment, and cultural environment, and social economical environment of the total environment. So de-addiction means the process where someone resorted back to wellness in context to mental health. That is followed a period of addiction. So considerable addiction take place. That is coagulation and flocculation. That is the addition of the various perikinetic and orthokinetic particles that is taken place in blood. So that is called the destabilization of perikinetic orthokinetic particles, that is negatively charged particles or positively charged particles. When coagulation dose is added, so that becomes destabilized, and it is precipitated, or it is flocculated as well as the sedimented, and it is the pH is rise from 11 or 12 to nearly acidic condition, nearly 4 or 3. And when the coagulation on the decoagulation dose is added, like the coagulation dose as well as decoagulation dose. So the decoagulation dose as well as the coagulation dose should be optimum. If it is neither more or nor less, so that will be not in a de-addiction stage. So that will be again addiction stage only. So de-addiction means the process where optimum coagulation dose has to be added in order to flocculate optimum level. And this central nerve systems where the neurons and the impact assessment has been done in this particular projects. And mental behavior disorders opioids and cannabinoids, and environmental health impact assessment. So the dissolved oxygen and the dissolved nitrogen, deoxygenation and reaeration, that has been calculated very systematically in this environmental health impact assessment. So whenever any drugs or any the alternatives alternative medicines, complementary medicines are designed and developed, it has to be necessary to consider the environmental health impact assessment, environment EHIA, in order to systematically identify this particular deoxygenation and reaeration rate. So here it is called anaerobic zone. You can see this is called aerobic zone and anaerobic zone, facultative zone. So deoxygenation rate and poisoning effects. So dissolved oxygen less than the appropriate level, 6.1 mg per liter in brain. So brain damage get affected because of the anaerobic. Anaerobic means it is absence of oxygen available in the brain cells. That is called neurons. So when the dissolved oxygen get depleted and the permissible limit, the brain damage take place, because brain damage due to the overexposure of the zinc in zinc plant and lead, chromite mining. Chromite mining in Orissa, people get exposed more than 10 ppm as against the normal level of 0.1 ppm. So brain get affected. So why brain get affected? Because toxic effects that are taken place due to inhalation, oral, as well as the inhalation and dermal, as well as ingestion, absorption in the stomach. Three routes that will produce the cancer effects. That is zinc exposure, lead exposure, chromite mining in Orissa. People get exposed with 3000 to 5000 ppm of chromium, nickel, molybdenum. Occupational health impact assessment that is taken place. And these have considerable impacts on the brain deoxygenation and reaeration. The capability to oxygenize in the system get affected. So that is why any project in neurosis or operations, we have to consider the environmental health impact assessment. Environmental health impact assessment. Kinetics, it is a kinetics theory, the growth rate as well as the microorganisms growth rate and substrate utilization concentration. Mu is the substrate utilization concentration. And here it is the S. S is the substrate concentration, utilization rate. The microkinetics, that is microbiological kinetics. So why this is given in this particular? Because the brain kinetics that has been considered in this environmental health impact assessment. So it is physical, chemical, biological, and the radioactive, as well as the cultural and social economical environment. And it's called natural as well as the artificial environments. And here it is a material and energy balance aspects. So how this study and check of environmental health impacts of de-addiction process has been considered. The identification of environmental health impacts of the de-addiction projects, preparation of the description of the existing environmental health conditions like dissolved oxygen, dissolved nitrogen, and dissolved oxygen, deoxygenation rate, reaeration rate, oxygen sag phenomena, and relevant eco standards, and environmental health prediction is a prediction assessment, and environmental health impact significance, identification and incorporation of the mitigation measures, how the mitigation measures should be incorporated, and how much dose, optimum coagulation dose, optimum flocculation dose. These are all the various phenomena that should occur. Overdose will always have impacts that will not have any, that will have considerable impacts on the patient satisfaction. So the customer satisfaction is very important. That is customers. For example, the poison that has been included in this, the rock drainage, acid rock drainage environment. So people get affected due to the pollution groundwater. So these poisons, adverse health impacts because of the chromium exposure, ARD exposure. So environmental health impact assessment for the nuclear power plants, PHA, psychological impact assessment. Many of the nuclear power plants do not consider the EHIA. So many people get exposed with the, what is called the alpha, beta, gamma rays. And people get affected in, for example, IG car, Indira Gandhi nuclear power plants, nuclear power projects. And for example, the China nuclear power plant, when I have visited during 2004, so they have considered the environmental health impact assessment So no question of the psychological effects take place near the vicinity of the power plant. But when we consider this environmental health impact assessment of the IG car, Alpha, we have found so many number of people get affected by the alpha, beta, gamma rays, and people get brain damage. Even I have visited recently Aram Care home. So one 85 years chief engineer get exposed with this alpha, beta, gamma from IG car and got admitted with the Alzheimer's disease. So schizophrenia disease. So why means this environmental health impact assessment has not been done properly in IG car. Whereas in Queensland Power Corporation, it has been considered they are very successful, zero defect power plant, nuclear power plant of alpha, beta, gamma. So why this particular case study I have given? So environmental health impact assessment will be able to control all the alpha, beta, gamma radioactive effects on the human being near the village, near the vicinity of the power plants. So there are more than 400 nuclear reactors in the world. So they are all prone to the various brain effects and the mental health effects. So the mental health effects in the sense, this particular called its mental health effects. Mental health effects. So this is particular thing. This case study shows it is a mental health effects. Deoxygenation, reaeration. Deoxygenation, reaeration in neurons. So deoxygenation means oxygen get depleted in neurons, microscopically and nanoscopically. And reaeration means addition of oxygen in the particular cells. Deoxygenation, reaeration. And the stabilization of the oxygen is very important in the therapy. So when the therapy does not provide the sufficient oxygen level in the particular patient, so then definitely it will have impacts on neurons. The damage of neurons take place. So that is why the de-addiction, optimum coagulation, optimum flocculation of the blood and the perikinetic orthokinetic stabilization from the pH level of nearly 7.1 to 7.5, from the acidic hazardous to the alkaline hazardous range. So pH less than 1 is highly acidic. The people exposed in this chromium pollution plants, so more than 1000 to 2000 ppm parts per million, they get affected by the brain disease. Why? Because this chromium, it is a carcinogenic substance. Chromium 6 is the carcinogenic, mutagenic substance, terogenic substance. People working in this chromium mines get affected. Occupational health impacts and Jaria coal fields. People get affected due to the coal mining disasters. People working in the lead, mining estates. So they get affected with the lead cancers. Why? Means because the corrosive impacts, corrosive, toxic, as well as the dermal and the beyond the permissible limits that has been taken place. So that is why the coagulation dose is very important, and decoagulation dose as well as the flocculation, sedimentation dose, and the tuberculotic crystals and incrusted crystals. Incrusted means like this. Tuberculotic means in the bottom it will be there. So it should be neither tuberculotic nor incrusted crystals. So microscopically and nanoscopically it is found out in this process approach model. The model is given. Psychological health impact assessment, physiological health impact assessment in nuclear power plants have been conducted. Why? Because psychological impacts means this damage of the cells by the alpha, beta, gamma beyond the permissible limit 0.1 becquerel per liter. 0.1 becquerel per liter. If the radioactive substance beyond 0.1 becquerel per liter, mental health get affected. It's mental health, just see that. So that get affected. So CO poisoning. CO poisoning means why the blood increase its carbon monoxide poisoning. And one of the previous presenter told about the synergistic poison. Synergistic means augmenting carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, and the lead. All these have combined action on the blood. That is called synergistic. Is cross-functional effects. So due to the photochemical smoke in Los Angeles, photochemical Delhi smoke. Why Delhi smoke has? Because it is synergistic poisoning. Synergistic means augmenting. that is carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and the lead and various other photo chemical oxidants, as well as nitrogen oxide, volatile organic compounds. So these are all the causes how the percentage of the carbon carboxymethyl, the globin is increasing right from the no symptoms to the coma. So that is due to the automobile impacts, automobile exhaust, and the poisoning that is taken place, long-term exposure to cigarette smoking, low-level radiation exposure, and moderate alcohol use are thought to produce chronic impacts, adverse and a toxic impact assessment, and a toxic impact assessment hazardous substance, and anything which because of its quantity, concentration, or physical and chemical infection characteristics that may cause significantly contribute and mortality and cause an increase in irreversible and serious irreversible or incapacitating reversible illness, or pose a substantial present or potential hazard to human health and animal health and the environment when improperly treated, stored, transported, or disposed of, or otherwise managed the hazardous waste or hazardous substance, that is pH less than 2, negative logarithm of hydrogen ion activity less than 2, pH more than 13, so that have the considerable ignitability characteristics and the toxic characteristics, toxic extraction, leaching procedures that are experimented in this particular project, and found that pH more than 13, that is called a highly hazardous alkaline damage on the brain, and highly acidic hazardous, that is damage on the brain. So especially in the mining workers, the workers who are working in the mining areas, where they are exposed with chromium pollution beyond the permissible limits, nearly around 10 ppm. Beyond that, they get brain damage. Why? Means it is hazardous substance, that is mutagenic, terogenic, carcinogenic, as well as these are all experimented in the field in occupational health exposures. Ignitability characteristics, corrosive, pH less than 2 and pH more than 12.5, corrosivity, and cancer production, mutagenicity, heterogeneity, reactivity, the strong base and strong acids, toxicity, ingestion, dermal, as well as the absorption in the stomach, ingestion, and dermal skin effects, as well as the brain damage. So these are all the various TCLP procedures have been conducted. That is environmental toxicological impacts, and food poisoning, heavy metal poisoning, carbon monoxide poisoning, photochemical, reactions, automobile exhaust, photochemical smoke in Delhi. Recently, Delhi caused a lot of damage due to the photochemical smoke, radon poisoning, chemical poisoning, and the primary poisoning, secondary poisoning, trauma impact assessment, and environmental health impacts assessment required for the de-addiction centers in order to control the de-addiction as well as addiction. So both are having effects, addiction as well as de-addiction. Over-addiction is over-coagulation. Over de-addiction, over decoagulation. So optimum dose is very important, is prescribed in this particular project. Synergistic poisoning, how the synergistic poisoning that is taken place, cross-functional, sunlight energy, P1 air pollution effects, and the synergistic poisoning, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, photochemical oxidants, and VOC, volatile organic compounds, have severe impacts. P5. P5 is a synergistic poisoning that is called photochemical smoke in Los Angeles, photochemical smoke in London, photochemical smoke recently taken place in Delhi. So many people get affected due to the lung cancer and brain damage. What was the reason? Means it is called a cross-functional impact assessment. So cross-functional impact assessment, it is required special drug modeling. This requires generic special drug modeling. This requires a source-specific drug modeling. So general drug will not be able to have any effects on this brain damage, because it is needed to first understand what is a root cause analysis, RCR. Then it has to be drug modeled It has to be environmental optimization and modeling diagram as given in this. It is called cross-functional. It is not only functional, it is cross-functional effects have to be identified and mitigated. So how these various steps that are necessary to conduct this environmental health impact assessment. For further reading, so these are all the various, the papers that have been presented in the addiction medicine, behavioral health and psychiatry. And during 2023, the page number is 220 to 21. So in this fourth edition of Global Congress on the addiction medicine, behavioral health and psychiatry, and the integration of quality, safety and sustainability management for addiction industries for the sustainable development during 2022 conference, that is a GAB conference, and the addiction medicine and substance use disorders mitigation centers for the sustainable environmental addiction medicine, behavioral health and psychiatry for the sustainable development. The sustainable development is a development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability and efficiency of future generations to meet their own needs. So with this, I thank Magnus Group LLC, Chicago, for giving me an opportunity to present this presentation on EHIA for the de-addiction centers in India. Thank you very much.